Hi, boys and girls. It's time for this week's story. And our story is called A Gift from Heaven. Well, Aggie, he was standing in front of his mother. He was really agitated and disgusted. Mom, all you do is pray all day long, and God doesn't listen. Nothing happens. Mother, she turned to him and she said, Aggie Holgerson, you know better than that. God even sees when the sparrows fall. You know that. Well, just then, Aggie's little sister came rushing in, and she put her head on her mother's lap. And Aggie couldn't bear to see his little sisters and brothers right now. He was afraid they were starving, so he got up and he went out of the room. He just didn't know what to do. He remembered how happy his family had been when they decided to move up here on the mountain. Well, Father had arranged for 20 acres that he purchased from the Swedish government. Now they were up in those beautiful mountains. It was hard work getting there. They brought along their 2 goats, which were the pets of the little ones, and everything that they needed up on that mountain, they carried on their backs. It was hard getting up that mountain, but oh, it was beautiful up there. They could see for miles down into the valleys, and it was theirs, their very own home. Well, when they got there, it was 20 acres, all right. And they thought it was a lot of work to get there. But when they got there, they had to clear the land for crops and a garden. They had to build a house and a shed for the goats to live in. It was a lot of hard work, but it was going to be their home. And every one of them were so happy. Right down the hill from them was a big lake. And the lake was full of fish, fresh trout that they could fish for any time they wanted it. It was part of their 20 acres. And the woods was full of berries and nuts and all kinds of things that they could add to what they grew in their garden. Well, that first summer, that garden grew and grew. It was absolutely lovely. And then disaster hit. Father got the yellow fever, and within just a few days, he died. Well, Mother and the children, all they could do was to carry on. They tried so hard to get vegetables in from the garden and to gather berries and nuts. And every day they milked those little goats, and Mama made cheese. But way before it was time for the snows to start, it started to snow. Actually, it was really, really bad. And Mother and Aggie went out, and they dug as much as they could dig of those vegetables, the potatoes and the carrots and the rutabagas, out of that garden. But before they could get even part of it dug, a blizzard came. And there was nothing they could do but go in the house and watch it, putting feet of snow over everything. Well, finally, that blizzard stopped, and the sun came out, and Aggie, he went out with the shovel and his pick. But when the blizzard had stopped, the temperatures plummeted. And when he tried to dig in that garden to see if he could find any more vegetables, it was like digging in solid rock. There was nothing he could do. Well, he thought, at least we have the dried fish. And we have the potatoes and the carrots that the kids have been able to get out of the garden. Well, then, it didn't stop snowing. It snowed and it snowed and it snowed. It was the worst winter that Sweden had ever seen. Well, now, Aggie, he felt responsible. He was all of 14. What could he do? He went outside and he looked in the shed. He put out some of that clover that they had cut during the summer for those 2 little goats to eat. He looked at them. So he made a decision, and he went right back in the house. And he went in to see his mother, and he said, "Come with me, Mom." So his mother followed him out through the snow out to the shed. And when they got inside, he said, "Okay, Mom, the time has come. You pick. Shall we kill the white goat or the black goat? I know that the children will cry and they'll miss their pets, but we have to have something to eat. We can't just keep eating dried fish every day." And Mother, she looked at him strangely, and she whispered, "The dried fish are all gone." And he said, "The more reason we need to kill the goat." And she stood there and she said, "God'll take care of us. We have a little flour left, and I can add a little bit of the goat's milk with it, and I can add some water, and I can make a gruel for us to eat. I have 2 measures of flour." And Aggie said, "You're thinking about that story in the Bible with Elijah, where God made the widow's flour and oil go on and on and on till the famine was done." "I don't know, Mom. We need to kill one of the goats." And she said, "No, Aggie, we're going to wait on God." Well, he was upset, but he went back in the house with his mom, and he looked at his brother Leaf, and he said, "Come on, get your boots and your coats on. We're going to go outside. We're going to go down to the lake, and we're going to make a hole in the lake and see if we can do some ice fishing." Well, Mother agreed that that was a good idea. So they went down to the lake. They tried. It took them forever to make a hole in that thick ice because it was so terribly cold. And they fished till they couldn't stand the cold anymore. But not one fish did they get. Not one. They went back to the house, and they kind of looked down. They told their mother, "We tried." And Mother said, "You did your best. That's all that God can expect of you." Then Leaf said to Mother, "Well, at least we can still have potatoes." Mother looked down and she went, "Shh, there aren't any more left." Oh, Aggie was really upset now. Well, the next morning they ate gruel for breakfast. And Aggie noticed that all night long, Mother had been kneeling beside her little bed. All night she prayed to God. When morning came, he was thinking to himself, why doesn't God do something? The little tiny ones, they held up their little bowls with the gruel that the gruel had been in, and with their tongues, they licked those bowls clean. Aggie couldn't watch any longer. He went in the other little room, and Mother went over and she was looking out the window. The sun was shining today, but oh, the snow was so deep and it was so fluffy. And then she saw something. What was that she saw? It was dark compared to the snow. She looked some more, and it looked like whatever it was waving in the wind. But it must have been caught somehow, because it wasn't, except for waving, it wasn't moving. And she turned around and she called, Aggie, come here. So Aggie came, and he got close to that window too, and he looked, and he said, I don't know what that is. Wasn't there yesterday. And then Leafy pushed his way between the two of them, and he looked out the window. I think it's a letter, he said. Do you think it's a letter? Well, how? How could a letter get up here, out in the snow? And Mother was standing there, and suddenly a broad grin came across her face. She said, you boys, go get it, go. So the two boys rushed out the door, and in their excitement, they forgot to put their boots on. And Aggie, he just started leaping through that snow. But Leaf, the first jump into the snow, it was waist deep on him. Aggie turned around and he said, you go back in the house. It's too deep for you. But he was too excited to obey. And he just jumped from one footprint of Aggie's to the next. And pretty soon they were down there by whatever that was. Well, Mother was still watching from the window, and she remembered that Aggie had come to her that morning and said, give me the money that we have in the house, and Leaf and I can go down the mountainside, down into the valley, to the store, and we can get supplies before another blizzard starts. And Mama's head had dropped. She said, we have 26 cents. That's all we have. It's not worth you risking your life for. It wouldn't buy hardly anything. Well, now Aggie and Leaf were out there, and they picked up a big, long brown envelope. But the unusual thing about it was there was no name written on the envelope. There was no address. There was no return address. Well, they picked up that envelope and they went hopping through those footprints that they had made to get down there, and they ran in the house. That envelope was sealed. They gave it to Mother, and she sat down And all the kids stood there. Their eyes were big, looking at that brown envelope. And she opened it up, and her mouth went, oh! And the boy said, "What is it, Mom? What is it?" And she said, "Now, boys and girls, when I tell you what's in it, you need to remember that this story happened a long time ago, and money went a whole lot further then. There was $15.40 in that envelope. That money would buy more than enough for two boys to carry back up the mountain, and it would feed them for weeks and weeks and weeks." Oh, Mom was astonished. And she looked at Aggie and she said, "God had to have sent it. He had to have answered our prayers." And Aggie stood there with his head hanging, and he said, "Mom, I'll never doubt God again. I believe now, Mom." Oh, and you know, that gift from heaven lasted them till the snow was to a point that other people could get up to them to help. And God provided the goats and the children and Mom all survived the hardest winter in Sweden. Boys and girls, remember what God said, that He sees every little bird that falls. He sees when you need help. He just wants us to ask. Thank you, boys and girls. I will see you next week. Bye-bye now.